Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm Jeja Flazanes, your producer and empowerment strategist. Thank you for downloading today's episode. Today, we're going to talk about reversing disease with the Gerson method. I learned about the Gerson method at the beginning of my personal training career, probably 25 years ago. And I had researched it a little bit here and there, had never really fully done a full program, but was so excited to hear about Dr. Vickers' clinic in Mexico and have him on the show. He was a guest on Alice and Melody's Food Heals podcast, and he's joining us here to educate us all about how the Gerson method can reverse disease. Now, before I get into a little bit more about Dr. Patrick Vickers, I just want to make the announcement that we are in May. And speaking of taking a trip and doing some deep dive and good detoxing kind of work, this year's event has been announced, and it is May of 2022, and we are in the early bird ticket pricing calendar. In May only, I will be offering the early bird pricing for this year's event, which is called Awaken Your Dream Life. And I'm sure you heard it on last week's episode if you were listening. Awaken Your Dream Life. I invite you to check out the page and to watch the videos, me and all of the other videos that are on the page. It's jejaflazanes.com/dreamlife. This does apply to health as well as relationships, business, money, general sense of well-being, peace, purpose, passion, energy, and really being conscious and deliberate and intentional about how you create your future. So if any of that interests you, please head on over to jejaflazanes.com/dreamlife and know that there is a payment plan that's really easy for you that's available right now with the early bird pricing, but that all changes in June. June 1st, it does go up. And I know a lot of you who've been listening for a while, think about, one day I'll get to an event. Well, watch the videos, because if you've been saying that for many years, this is probably the year to try to make that happen. It's going to be epic. It will sell out. I have a limited room, and I already have 25 tickets taken. So jejaflazanes.com/dreamlife. So let's get back to today's episode with Dr. Vickers. He is a graduate of the New York Chiropractic College, representing the face of Gerson Therapy worldwide. Nobel Peace Prize winner Dr. Albert Schweitzer called Dr. Max Gerson the most eminent genius in medical history, as the Gerson therapy has the most storied reputation to date for its ability to reverse advanced cancer and degenerative diseases. With 7 movies chronicling Dr. Gerson's work, no other therapy has received such recognition on an international scale. Unfortunately, the Gerson therapy remains the most censored therapy by governments, medical authorities, and media outlets around the world, as it poses an imminent threat to the conventional medical system. Personally trained by Dr. Gerson's family and one of the few people who have studied Dr. Gerson's handwritten files, Dr. Patrick Vickers continues to carry on the Gerson legacy through his premier Advanced Gerson Clinic in Rosarito, Mexico, as well as lecturing and interviewing on various platforms around the world on the indisputable cellular science behind health, disease, and the Gerson therapy. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm Jeja Flazanes, your empowerment strategist and producer. Today, we're going to talk about reversing disease with the Gerson method. And I have with us Dr. Patrick Vickers. Now, for those of you that are following me on the podcast, we did a video. So come on over to jejaflazanes.tv so you can see Dr. Vickers. And if you're finding this on YouTube and you're not so crazy about me, but you want more of him, where could they find you, Dr. Patrick?
Yeah, so if you go to our website, gersonclinic.com, and you hit the gift section, and then a password will pop up. You type in the word podcast, all lowercase, and you can see hours and hours of interviews and videos and lectures that I give on the science behind the Gerson therapy, testimonial of cancer patients and other diseased patients that we've reversed their diseases. So yeah, go to our website, gersonclinic.com, click on gift, put in podcast, all lowercase, and you can watch me for, hours upon hours.
Perfect. Let's get that out of the way right away. And because I'm going to have a conversation on this show. So Welcome. I'm so excited to have you. I'm so excited to educate people about the Gerson therapy and the Gerson method, which I probably found out about. I don't even know who told me. This was probably, I've been a personal trainer for over 20 years. And I'm going to say it might've been, it's older than 20 years, right?
The Gerson therapy has been around for 120 years.
Right. Okay. So I forget when and where, but it was definitely in the personal training space, educational space about cancer. And I had said after learning about it, years ago, again, 20 years ago, that we have cures for cancer. They're just not supported. We always have. It's not, we've had methods that aren't profitable for the medical industry. So that's
right.
why nobody knows about them, but they
That's
already
right.
exist. And I remember watching some videos and stuff. So why don't we first start out with your journey
Yeah.
before we get to Gerson, and then how you're doing this now with the Gerson method.
Yeah, thanks. So I wanted to be a chiropractor ever since I was 11 years old. I saw a miraculous chiropractic adjustment. It stuck with me since age 11. And so I'm a year away from graduating New York Chiropractic School when I was like 28, when Charlotte Gerson, Dr. Gerson's last living daughter, came to speak at my school. Gerson died in 1959. Charlotte Gerson was the last living daughter of Dr. Max Gerson, and she came and spoke at my school in 1997. And as soon as she opened her mouth, I said, that's what I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing. It obviously was the higher calling. I mean, 8 movies have chronicled Dr. Gerson's work. No other therapy in history can boast, even remotely boast, that kind of exposure on an international scale. And so lo and behold, I became extremely passionate about the Gerson therapy, graduated from chiropractic school. Charlotte Gerson actually invited me to come live with her in 1950 at her home in San Diego, where I went through all her father's handwritten files of all his patients between 1910 and 1959. That's when he was practicing, and I'm one of only a handful of people who've ever gone through those handwritten files. Now, I mean, it's just such an incredible honor. Nobel Peace Prize winner, Dr. Albert Schweitzer, he called Gerson the greatest genius in medical history. Well, Gerson's been dead now, 60 years, and he remains the greatest genius in medical history. His therapy is the most renowned historically for being able to reverse advanced disease. So that's essentially my background with the Gerson therapy.
Great. And
Yeah.
did you have any history of cancers or disease in your family that made you so passionate about taking this on?
No, it was the miraculous chiropractic adjustment that I saw when I was 11 years old. I mean, that taught me the incredible power of the human body when you give it what it needs. But never in my wildest imaginations did I think that the human body was capable of reversing the most advanced of diseases, including terminal cancer, until I found out, and learned about the Gerson therapy. I mean, I had no idea. I mean, I knew the body was powerful, but I didn't realize it was that powerful when you give it exactly what it needs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what the Gerson method, Gerson therapy is.
Yeah. So if you ever heard Charlotte Gerson speak, she died 3 years ago this month. But if you ever heard her lecture and people would ask, well, what are the causes of disease? She would tell you deficiency and toxicity. Those are the 2 major factors of disease today. And as you and I discussed, there's obviously another component of emotions, right? But if you were to talk to her or her father, they would tell you deficiency and toxicity, which ultimately causes a breakdown in metabolism. Metabolism is the secret to everything, right? And so everything that we do is based on the restoration of metabolism. If you read Gerson's book that he published a year before he died, one word sticks out over and over and over again, and that is metabolism, which by definition is the breakdown of food into energy. So everything we do rallies around that very aspect of human existence, that how the human body functions. We function on metabolism, the breakdown of food into energy. Once our body stops creating energy, that's death. And so everything we do is just that. And so the Gerson therapy is a massive dietary and detoxification regimen. Our patients are getting 20 pounds of organic fruits and vegetables every single day, mostly in the form of juices. They're getting 13 fresh pressed organic juices every hour on the hour daily. And then they're getting 5 coffee enemas every single day to detoxify the human body. There's not a more potent way to detoxify the human body than a coffee enema. And then there's very specific supplements geared towards restoring cellular metabolism and the breakdown of food into energy. Where does the breakdown of food into energy begin? It begins in the gut. Is it any wonder that we're told in natural medicine that 70% of your immune system is in the gut? Well, of course it is. That's where metabolism begins, the breakdown of food. And so once the food's broken down and absorbed into the bloodstream, now you've got to restore the body's ability, the cell's ability to convert that food into energy. And that all is based on restoring the metabolism within the cell. So every single thing we do is is based on that very premise. And so it's a massive dietary and intensive dietary and detoxification regime. And there's no shortcuts. You know, people say, well, why is the Gerson therapy historically the most successful therapy? Because it's the hardest. There's no shortcuts to healing. You know, people want to be hooked up to an IV. They want to take a pill. They want to take a supplement and they think it's making them better, but it's not. Only food and heavy detox ultimately heals the human body. And that requires a proactive patient with a lot of discipline, a lot of vision, and a lot of hard work. And so that's why it's so successful, because it's so intensive and it's such hard work. And that's why it gets the results.
I actually know somebody, now that I recall, that actually had, her girlfriend had cancer and she did the Gerson method, and she's still alive. So I remember, and I don't remember what kind of cancer she had. I mean, I would now, if this was happening now, I would be much more educated about all of this, since this is a part of what I'm doing too, in a way, just from obviously the other angle of emotions, as we talked about, which I do want to kind of touch on just for a little bit at the end, because again, you get to see it. You get to see the people who come. And the thing that I think Gerson has in common with the kind of work I'm doing emotionally with cancer patients or whoever, people who are have disease and need to recover, is that most people wait until, and nothing else, they've tried everything else. They've tried all the easier ways and it doesn't work. Because not only does Gerson take discipline and focus and commitment, so does the bravery of looking in the mirror to deal with your wounds and your feelings. But people have to be pushed. They literally have to attract their back up against the wall before they're willing to let go of control and surrender to the things that will really make the biggest difference, because they're afraid. And it's funny, because I'm due for a coffee enema. I'm like, because I did a month off of alcohol and off of wine. I drink mostly wine. I have a wine podcast, and I was like, oh, I should go do extra like infrared saunas, and I should have been doing coffee enemas the entire month, but I just forgot about it. I've had so many things going on, but I think to hear that. And to know, and I can speak from experience when it comes to colonics and coffee enemas and these healing modalities, which again, I'm the weird person who says, cool, sign me up. Let's not even get close to disease. Let's hit it. Let's get out ahead of the game.
That's right.
That way, this isn't even a conversation. Like this is not something we have to force people to do when you understand the benefits and the powers of it. So I want to go over, we had talked a little bit offline, and it's in your materials. And it's going on in the world right now. All the censorship and the, Gerson's been around for, what you said, 100 years?
Yeah. He started curing disease roughly around 1920. That's right.
And what's the censorship story on Gerson?
Yeah. So, he had become renowned for healing cancer in the United States. He set up practice in Manhattan. When Hitler came to power, he had to flee Germany. He lost his entire family in the Holocaust, and he himself nearly died in the Holocaust, but he lost all of his family. And so he fled to Manhattan, and he set up practice on Park Avenue. And it was there where he started to reverse advanced cancer. Well, 1946, the Pepper-Neely anti-cancer bill comes to the floor of the United States Senate. It was designed to appropriate $100 million in funding to anyone who could show promise in the realm of cancer research. Well, word had gotten out that there's this German doctor in New York who's reversing cancer in its most advanced stages. And so he's invited to testify July 1st through the 3rd, 1946, on behalf of the Pepper-Neely anti-cancer bill. And everybody was so shocked in behind Senate chambers doors, that Senator Claude Pepper himself, who to this day remains the longest serving senator and congressman in U.S. history, he said Dr. Gerson dedicated his life to the mastery of this scourge of cancer, and all should honor his great work. Well, he was supposed to give an interview to the international press after that. So he's whisked away to the international press room, and he sat there alone for an hour and a half. Nobody showed up to interview him. The international press had been whisked away to another room, and an impromptu party was thrown on their behalf. Why? Because Gerson wasn't only talking about how he was able to reverse advanced disease. He was talking about everything that was causing disease at that point, which is what's causing disease today. The agricultural industry, the agrochemical industry, the food industry, the petroleum industry. All of these things that are destroying our planet, which are destroying our bodies, are the very same industries supporting the campaigns and the salaries of these politicians. And so you can imagine the red flag that went up through all of Washington when Dr. Gerson is sitting there exposing all of these things. So he sat there alone, and the international press never got a chance to interview him. Luckily, in the room that day, or those days, was a guy named Raymond Graham Swing. Who's Raymond Graham Swing? Well, back then there were no TVs, right? So if you wanted to listen to the news every night at 7 p.m. every night, you gathered around your radio, you could listen to ABC, NBC, or CBS News. Now, the famous anchor for CBS News was the famous Edwin Murrow. Now, I don't know who NBC's anchor was, but ABC News's anchor, and he'd been working for ABC News for 33 years at that point, was Raymond Graham Swing. And Raymond Graham Swing heard all of Gerson's testimony. He went on his radio broadcast that night, and he said to the entire nation, he said, please forgive me if I don't have my morals correct in talking about these other stories. The Truman anti-racketeering bill had just been signed, something regarding Trieste in Italy, and a partition of World War II or something had been signed. They were huge stories for the evening. He spent virtually the entire hour telling our nation that the cure for cancer and virtually every other disease had been found. Well, for 9 hours straight, the switchboard at ABC News Radio in Manhattan lit up with people from all over the world calling in, begging to find out where to find this cancer treatment. 2 weeks later, Raymond Graham Swing was fired from his job at ABC News Radio. Now, that's the first story. I could tell you 4 or 5 more stories of equal significance. You know, Prince Charles is one of our greatest advocates. He once spoke about it on an international stage. We've cured 2 of his friends. He was completely ostracized and censored in the international press of those statements. So this has been an ongoing thing for not just, 10, 20 years. We're going back to 1946. So Gerson became a marked man. He was one of the most published doctors in the world at that point. From that point, he became prohibited from publishing in all major medical journals around the world up until his death in 1959. And he died a broken man. He was completely ostracized, ridiculed, and he died a depressed and broken man, and obviously so.
Wow.
Yeah, his story is remarkable.
Well, and it's so simplistic in terms of, even like we talked about, like you said, it's toxicity and deficiency. And then of course I'm going to say it's also, and then the emotional piece, right? So all 3 of those things. But when we look at the human body and metabolism from just that scientific perspective of metabolism and what we're feeding ourselves, and then and how we're getting rid of, like what comes in and what's going out, and what's getting stuck, and what's there that shouldn't be, and very basic, simple questions. And I think that most people, I'm not going to say most people who listen to this show, but a lot of people don't have any idea about how the government's so tied up in medical everything, in everything. And that most of what goes on is about health. It's about profit. And it always has been, since who's the Rockefeller, right? Yeah. Since Rockefeller.
That's right.
And Doug and I were talking about presidents. Again, I am not political and I do not know my politics. But he said something about Reagan, like, oh, I'm okay with a Reagan presidency. I said, Reagan's the reason we're in this mess right now, with the bill, with letting all the companies off the hook for any negative adverse reactions. So anyway, but it really is that tied into, and people think, oh no, but it's healthcare. Oh, yeah. It's about health. No, healthcare is called sick care. Our healthcare system has it's not about health. It's about patching you up. But it isn't about health.
That's right.
But there are people like you, and like a lot of the doctors that of course I bring on the show are about health, and we want to, the message is kind of the same, just different ways to apply it.
That's
so
right.
when you started looking at all Gerson's materials and you wanted to recreate and do the work, where did you start? I mean, I know where you are now, but where did you start?
Yeah. So, when I graduated from school, I spent probably 10, 15 years just lecturing around the world on Dr. Gerson's clinic. And then 11 years ago, I knew Charlotte Gerson was going to be retiring from the Gerson Institute, which she established. And I knew that when she did that, the people that she put in charge of running it were going to run it into the ground. And Dr. Gerson's legacy would be at stake. Between 1959, when Gerson died, and 1977, the therapy died with him. Nobody did it for 18 years after his death. And then someone approached Charlotte Gerson in 1977 and offered all the money necessary to rebirth the Gerson therapy. Well, I was quite afraid that once Charlotte retired and eventually would pass away, because she passed away at 98, that Dr. Gerson's legacy would once again be at stake. And so I went and opened up my own clinic. And we've taken Dr. Gerson's therapy. And this is the other thing too. One of the tragic things Charlotte didn't do was she never changed the therapy from the day her father died. Now, her father was the consummate scientist. He was constantly changing and perfecting his therapy based on what was coming out in the scientific literature of his time. If he'd be alive today, 60 years later, everything that's come out in the scientific literature proving benefit to cancer treatment, you can rest assured he'd be on top of it. And he would be altering his treatment and manipulating his treatment based on that. Well, that's probably one of the biggest tragedies that, Charlotte left behind in her legacy was she refused to change it. And I think because at her death, she was the longest living Gerson survivor. Her father cured her of terminal tuberculosis when she was 12 years old. So you can imagine the deep psychological connection she had to her father, where she wanted to keep her father etched in time, right? And so we've taken Dr. Gerson's therapy and we've maintained his basic protocols, but we've also advanced them with proven scientific treatments that have been shown beneficial for the reversal of cancer and other diseases. And so we call it the Advanced Gerson Therapy. And I opened this clinic just over 10 years ago on those premises. And so it's become, the premier protocol in the world for being able to reverse advanced disease. I mean, the Gerson therapy alone is that. And you enhance it with what we're doing. And I don't see a more comprehensive, protocol anywhere in the world that can match that. So that's essentially, where we've taken it since, I've started 25 years ago.
And your clinic is a show up, be in person clinic. That is really how we administer the work.
Yeah, that's right. We don't do remote consulting. We're just too busy. I don't have the time to do remote consulting. So not only that, a patient really needs to come for 2 to 3 weeks to learn how this therapy is so specific. When you're diagnosed with advanced cancer, the rules change. What you can eat and what you can't eat are completely different than what a healthy patient can eat. And so to learn these specific dietary rules and regimes and the supplement protocol, the detoxification, you really need to live it out for a minimum of 2 weeks to be able to go home comfortable, understanding what you must do for the next 2 years. To reverse an advanced cancer, it takes 2 years. This isn't something that happens overnight. The cancer didn't happen overnight. That's at least a 10-year process. And so it's certainly not going to go away overnight. And the fact that we can reverse it within 2 years, I mean, that's mercy, right? I mean, that's pretty much the definition of mercy, where you can destroy your body for 50, 60 years and we can reverse it in 2, So you really have to come to a clinic to really get, comfortable with what you need to do going home.
Now, we've talked a lot about cancer and everyone who has heard lots of things about cancer. Let's talk about other diseases that the Gerson therapy has helped with.
Yeah, sure. So take Nobel Peace Prize winner, Dr. Albert Schweitzer, who called Gerson the greatest genius in medical history, right? Schweitzer, 8 years before he won the Nobel Prize, had severely advanced type 2 diabetes. Gerson cured him in 6 weeks. I mean, that's standard on the Gerson protocol for an advanced diabetic patient. Within 6 weeks, we have them off all their medications, and then they just need to continue for a good 6 to 9 months to restore the causes of the disease and restore the cellular metabolism, and they're free to go. And take heart disease, right? Someone who's scheduled for a triple quadruple bypass surgery, in 4 weeks, we're canceling their surgeries. Autoimmune diseases. The former executive director of the Gerson Institute, Gar Hildenbrand, him and his wife, they had severely advanced lupus. They were both cured by Gerson, which is why he went on to eventually become the executive director of the Gerson Institute. He's dedicated his life to it. So these are things, high blood pressure. You come to our clinic, in 2 weeks, you're off all your meds. I mean, can you think about the billions and billions of dollars that this would, accumulate in terms of medical profits? Just those diseases alone that I just mentioned, And so all of these things, fibromyalgia is a joke. You come to our clinic 1 month, 2 weeks at our clinic, 2 weeks at home. Most fibromyalgia patients, they're 90% better. And then once they continue doing the protocol for another 2 to 3 months, they're 100% better. So all these other non-malignant diseases, they're a walk in the park. Cancer is the elephant in the room. Cancer is that is the ultimate degradation and degeneration of the human organism. And so to restore and rebuild that immune system, to be able to destroy that takes a lot longer. But all these other diseases, I mean, they're weight loss, weight loss. Our patients and companions, they lose 1/4 to a pound a day until they're their normal weight. All of this while consuming 3,500 to 4,000 calories a day in food. How's that possible? How is that possible? Your experts tell you have to consume 1,200 to 1,500 calories per day if you want to lose weight. Well, ours are consuming 3,500 to 4,000 calories, and they're walking out with 1/4 to a pound a day less than when they entered. Why is that? Because weight loss has nothing to do with caloric intake. It has everything to do with being able to convert those calories into energy, which again is metabolism, the breakdown of food into energy. And nobody restores that better than we do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you about so you said it was 2 weeks and again, or 2 weeks minimum or 1 week minimum? What's
2 week minimum. Most will stay for 3 weeks if they can afford it and they have the logistics to be able to do that. But we don't require a 3-week stay. We require 2.
And when you and I talked about from maybe a detox protocol, like a week.
Yeah. If someone
it's not a disease.
That's right. If someone wanted to come for a week of detox, we don't have a problem with that. But if you are currently suffering with a disease, it'll be a 2-week minimum.
Okay. And then walk me through the process of so someone decides to come, do they meet with someone before, or can anybody come, like, to determine how long they're going to stay and what the best treatment is for them, or what they're dealing with, and then if the protocol changes at all?
Yeah, so I handle all intake. So I'm on the front end of everything. You call, I'm there. You send an email, I'm there. You send a text, it's me. So I handle all the intake. So people will contact us. I send them out information. Once they've gone through the information and they're interested in coming to the clinic, then I will set up a consult with them and go through that, what the logistics of that would be. And I send them all the information. Everything's laid out transparently. There's no extra costs. There's no hidden schemes, nothing of that nature, right? And, really, there's only 2 plans. There's the detox plan and there's the cancer plan. And, healing's not specific. We're all quite similar in our body's needs for healing. And so, we may tweak one of those plans a little bit based on a certain condition, or where, if someone has a heart problem or a kidney problem, we may have to tweak it in, very minimal ways. But for the most part, the treatment protocol is the same across the board for a cancer patient or any disease patient for that matter, and a detox patient. So I'm on the front end. They call, text, or email me. I send them information. And, we're typically filled up 2 to 3 weeks out. So 2 to 3 weeks out, you'll probably have to wait 2 weeks to get in, because our clinic is typically full for that amount of time.
Have you run into, like people wanting to censor you or government? I mean, you're in Mexico, and I'm guessing it's a little bit more lenient there than it is here.
Well,
is that why?
Yeah, well, not only is it more lenient, right, but it's outside their jurisdiction, right? Because if I did open this clinic in the United States, doing what I do and making the claims that we can make, we would go to jail and our clinic would get shut down. I mean, that just is the reality, right? But to answer your question, have I gotten censored? No. And the reason why is because I'm a little fish in a big sea. And I tried to keep it that way. I'm not out there on the rooftop shouting, oh, Dr. Gerson's been censored for curing cancer. I used to be that way. I was actually that way in the first 5 or 10 years when I first came across the Gerson therapy. I was full of piss and vinegar, and so but I don't do that now. And I actually got that advice from Chris Wark from Chris Beat Cancer. He's probably one of the biggest names in our industry. He gave me that advice. He said, look, if they censor you and end up coming down and shutting you down, because the feds can come across and shut you down if they want to, the American feds. They've done it before to people for other reasons, but if they wanted to, they could. But to keep a low profile, there's no need to be taking on the beast. You just don't take on the beast. You're not going to win. You have to fight the beast from a guerrilla type of warfare, and so I just keep a low profile. I maintain Gerson's legacy, his treatment, and we're just trying to do the best that we can on advancing that.
Let's talk a little bit about, you and I had a conversation about the emotional piece, because you guys, and just from your experience with the people that you work with, that you see, and knowing that it has nothing, like that they're not there to do that kind of work, but talk about your perspective of, what the issues are, if you see a through line, like lots of people come in and they've had unhealed trauma, just give me your perspective of the people.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. If the secret to Dr. Gerson's ability to reverse disease is metabolism and the breakdown of food into energy, let's talk about how do the emotional and traumatic components of someone's mind and spirit affect those two things. We know the gut-mind connection, the gut-brain connection. If you're holding all that anger, emotion, and trauma from the past, what's that going to do to your gut? What's that going to do to your body's ability to break down food and convert it into energy? Let's talk about the incredible amount of energy that you're wasting. That energy that's being wasted in the stress and in the agony and the trauma, that energy should be going towards healing. That's the whole purpose of what we do. We try to recreate the energy that's not being produced in order for the immune system to rally an immune response. So when you're looking at the emotional trauma that people come in with, that is how it's affecting them on a cellular level. Then you can go into hormones and things like that, which are also affecting all of that as well, right? But, had you asked me 20 years ago, 15 years ago, before I opened this clinic, what were the causes of disease? I would have said 99% of the time it's deficiency and toxicity. After having this clinic now for 10 years, I would tell you that there is a major emotional component behind a lot of these cancers. Not necessarily all of them, but a lot of them. I've never seen so much dysfunction in my life. These patients coming in have so much dysfunction in their childhood, in their personal relationships, all of these different things. And you take that with the deficiency and toxicity in our environment today, you've created the perfect cesspool of disease. Yeah. And so that's my experience. I mean, that's the way I now see it. I didn't see it that way in the beginning, but I would have to say now it's probably a well-balanced, portfolio of causes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm never in denial of the physical things that we deal with in this world, that they affect our bodies. It's that what I think when Dr. William Davis had me in his membership, and someone had asked, I think I've told the story before, but the last person who asked the question before I left said, is it the chicken or the egg? Is it that we balance the immunity to help the emotions, or the emotions first? And I said, well, the physical container, it has a charge to it. And all the things that you do physically you can go inside out or outside in, but it's going to be a lot easier for healing if the container, that's all the actions that you're doing, all the physical actions, feels better if it's charged with positive emotions and with you having hope and you releasing things, versus like you said about digestion. And people know that when they feel stressed out or angry, people get stomach aches, people get nauseous, people can feel it's knots in your stomach, right? What's that phrase? That phrase is, well, if it's creating knots in your stomach, it's absolutely affecting your metabolism and your digestion.
No doubt.
Right. So to me, and I'm that crazy person. I've talking about it for 20 years. Like, it's all I talk about. I had to get to this point to be like, oh, this is my life mission. Because it's literally, for me, it's the one part people aren't talking about. It's easy, although Gerson's not easy. Although I don't think, whatever. Everyone, if you detox at all, if you have done any kind of fasting program, any kind of detoxing, it's just like exercise. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And it doesn't have to be hard, but it does require a high level of commitment, as do, programs that aren't quite as intense. But it's, again, that relationship to your body, to your health, and wanting change. and wanting it so badly, wanting it, being committed to it in a way you may never have been before. But that's also where I think the gift of disease comes in, because some people are only going to, they're going to get away with what they can get away with until they can't get away with it anymore. And then they have to ask the hard question, am I willing to commit to myself in a brand new way that I never have before? And hopefully for some people, it's going to be no. It's going to be, no, I'm done. Like, I'm going to transition and I'm cool with that because I don't want to work that hard. And then some people will say, which is why I never thought I'd be working with these kinds of populations, because the mental emotional component is, for cancer anyway, is like giving up. And I don't want to have to convince somebody to live, right? It's either like, I respect that we don't die, we transition. So if you're going to, and so I'm not afraid of death. And if someone is clinging because they are afraid of a painful death, or they're afraid of death because they don't believe anything afterwards, or they think this is the only life they have. When we look at the emotional work and the spiritual component to this whole process and the lessons that could be extracted from the journey that they're on, like, why did it get them to here? And I think that, it can be a blessing. And I'm sure you have some of those patients who have completely, not only did they heal, but then transform their entire life completely, and almost are thankful that they had to get here, because without this really big, ugly contrast that required them to do things they never would have done on their own, now they have a different life that they either love or appreciate differently than the one that they had prior to the disease.
Well, exactly. And with that said, take depression, anxiety, and schizophrenia. We actually do really well with those. Why? The gut-brain connection. Once you start flooding the body with the proper amount of nutrients and the proper minerals like magnesium, potassium in the form of juices, all the other B vitamins in the form of juices, not supplements. Supplements are called supplements because they're supposed to be supplemented with proper diet, right? But depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, we can reverse that without psychological counseling, but, so there's two ways to tackle these things, and both should probably be implemented. But just by healing the gut, people go through serious transformations. I mean, it's remarkable. They're no longer feeling bad. They're feeling healthy again. Imagine what that does to the psyche, right? So it's like you said, which comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? I mean, it goes both ways. You have to heal both aspects to achieve the optimal result, right? And so we do it. That's how we do it.
Excellent. Now, I know this is going to be an off the cuff question, kind of, because as you said, you're pretty busy. 3 weeks out, you're booked. Are there any considerations of another clinic, or of having people come on to help people do things remotely, just for the people that, is there anything that you're considering on the in-between in the future?
Yeah. I should probably try to raise someone up to do remote consulting, because we do get that a lot. But I just haven't gotten there yet, especially now with the pandemic and stuff. It's just, things have gotten a little more difficult to handle in terms of running a clinic. For example, we had a 11-bed facility, and with the advent of the pandemic, we recognized the direction this was going. There's going to come a point where vaccines are going to be required to come into Mexico, to go in and to leave. And so we're going to lose half our patient base at that point, because the people naturally coming to us for the Gerson therapy, they're not going to get vaccinated. So they're not going to come to Mexico, right? So right now we're in that adjustment. We've taken on a facility that's a little less than 11 people. I've purchased a farm in Washington where I'm probably going to be holding retreats for people to go there instead of coming to Mexico, but I won't be taking on necessarily cancer patients. They'll be mandatory to come. So we're going through a transition right now, like everybody is in this new adapted world that we've got to, navigate ourselves around. But yeah, so we'll probably get to a point where we have an online remote consulting. The closest thing I have to that right now is on our website. We have a store, and we offer a 1-month supply of the Gerson therapy for people who are serious about doing it. And in that, I include a 1-hour consult with them just to get them going. And then they get all the media materials, the educational materials, to educate themselves further on it so that they can put themselves on it. I mean, books have been written where you could read it and possibly package it all together. I've seen very few people able to do that perfectly, but if you're just dealing with a non-malignant disease, that's a viable option. But if you're dealing with a malignant disease and the rules are so specific, remote consulting in that program probably isn't the best for you, and a visit to our clinic is. So we're working on that. We're trying to navigate our way through this mess that we're in. And hopefully in the next year or so, we'll have a better idea on what that's going to look like.
Well, I wanted to put that out there so that people could, again, be in touch, follow you, be on your newsletter. So that way, if that's a consideration, I mean, obviously there's like, for those that aren't in desperate need right now, but would like to either come or do some of this with you in a different way when it's the right time. So what would be the best way for someone to follow you, to be up to date with when that may happen?
Yeah, so we're always posting updates on our website, gersonclinic.com, like when I'll have a retreat up at the farm in Washington, or when we're offering, maybe a discount on a detox program. So all that they can follow on gersonclinic.com. Our Facebook page is the Advanced Gerson Therapy Clinic, the Advanced Gerson Therapy Clinic. And I also have a personal Facebook page where we're just cross-posting on both of those. Patrick Vickers, obviously. So Advanced Gerson Therapy Clinic on Facebook. We have a YouTube channel. I'm not sure what that is exactly. So you can go to our website. It's on our website. Yeah, I'm not really good with these kind of things. I'm kind of a technophobe and techno dweeb, and I'm not very savvy with these things. So my web guy does all that for me. But you go to our website, it's all there. All our Twitter, our YouTube, Instagram, all of that's on there as well.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. Well, everyone, make sure all the links will be below this video, as well as on the show notes underneath the audio podcast. So make sure to click and, again, follow Dr. Vickers, because, you want to experience this in some way, shape, or form, especially and have the resource also for anyone that who's looking for something like this.
Absolutely.
There are, clinics all over the world that do different things. And I know specifically at one point I was researching Gerson, and other people were researching Gerson, and I didn't know about you.
Yeah.
At the time. And but it was before you opened this clinic. So that would make sense, because I did look it up online, and I was watching some of the testimonial videos of different cancers and things that had been, and a lot of it was like the skin cancer. What was the
melanoma?
The melanomas, right? So this therapy's been around for a long time. And again, on the top level of it, it's like you said, detoxification, and then replenishing what you probably don't have or is not included in your daily regime of your diet and minerals and things that you need. So I really encourage everyone to check it out. I may be going down for a little detox at some point, because I would love to do it. I've always wanted to do like a structured one like that. In fact, there's in California, in Palm Springs, there's a spa. It's called We Care Spa. And I've always wanted to go there, but it's a little shorter. It's like a 3-day thing. And I haven't done it yet. So, which maybe that's why, because I'm supposed to go to your clinic instead. So we could talk about that another time, but I want everyone to check out
Advanced Gerson Therapy Clinic.
The Advanced Gerson Therapy Clinic. Click on the Facebook page, follow, sign up. Is there a place on your website to be part of a newsletter if they wanted to give you their email address?
We don't have a newsletter per se, but like I said, we're always posting new stuff, and so and on our other pages as well, right?
Excellent.
So
right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Patrick, for coming today and letting us know about your clinic and about the Gerson method. It was a pleasure to have this conversation about Gerson, because it's been something that I may mention to people and they're, I've heard about the Gerson method. So now I can educate the world about what it is and why they want to know about it.
Yeah. Look, Dr. Gerson's legacy is one to behold. I mean, no other man in American history has gone through what Dr. Gerson went through when it was discovered that he was reversing virtually every single disease. So the word needs to get out, because it's not going to get out in the media. And so it's through these grassroots efforts like yourself, like the lady, was it Melody?
Allison.
Yeah, Allison. Yeah, that interviewed me. It's people like you that are participating in getting his message out post death, right?
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.